Hi, my name is Megan, and I'm a public health educator here at Maine CDC. Today, I'd like to talk to you about mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases in Maine. There are more than 45 different species of mosquitoes that live in Maine. However, only about half of these species will actually bite people and take a human blood meal. Just like there are different types of mosquitoes that prefer different food sources, there are types of mosquitoes that prefer different types of habitats. So some mosquitoes prefer wetlands or forested areas, more wild places, while there are other mosquitoes that thrive in urban and suburban habitats, living really close to people. Regardless of these habitat preferences, however, all mosquitoes require standing water for breeding. They need this water source in order for the eggs to hatch, in order for the larvae and the pupa, which are two different life stages of the mosquito, to survive, to be able to breathe, to be able to get their food and move on to the next life stage. And generally speaking, rivers and fast-flowing streams are not good places for mosquito larvae and pupae to survive. They really need stagnant bodies of water in order to survive and thrive. All right, so we've got mosquitoes that like to lay eggs in what we call natural plant containers. So they'll lay eggs in rain-filled cavities, anywhere that there's a hole that rain can fill. This could be holes in trees where, say, a branch has withered up and died and fallen out, creating a nice hole. It could be holes between roots of trees. It could be any sort of water-holding plants, for example, bromeliads, pitcher plants, things like that. It could even be low-lying areas where rainfall or snowmelt will gather. One of the earliest mosquitoes that we see coming out and biting in the spring are what we call snowmelt mosquitoes, and they really specialize in these puddles that form in the forest when the snow melts and the water collects. Then there are other mosquitoes that really need well-established, long-standing bodies of water, like bogs or swamps. These tend to have really acidic soil, peat bottoms, water that ranges anywhere from clear to tea-colored because of the organic matter in it. A certain type of plant life, so usually a mixture of mature hemlock, red maples, yellow birches, beech trees, and some particular kinds of shrubs really like to grow in these areas. And these mosquitoes really specialize here. And actually the mosquito that transmits triple E virus, or Eastern Equine Encephalitis virus, which is one of our pathogens that circulates in Maine, actually lives in these areas. That's where this mosquito specializes. All right, so just like we have mosquitoes that specialize in different natural habitats, we also have mosquito species that are really good at using artificial mosquito habitats. These are man-made containers around our homes, our yards, our businesses that can hold stagnant water. Anything that can hold water is great mosquito habitat. This could range anywhere from large discarded containers like old appliances, toilets that got removed and left in the yard to hold water in the bowl, old washing machines, anything like that, to small discarded containers like paint cans, solo cups, discarded tires. Those unmounted car tires are actually one of the biggest breeding grounds that we have in Maine. They collect around a lot of people's houses, and they're really nice dark. They're made of this really nice dark rubber that attracts the mosquitoes. It holds lots of heat and it can hold that water there in the bell of the tire. And this is a really great spot for those mosquitoes to lay eggs and for those larvae to develop. You can also see mosquito larvae in plant pots and dishes that are left out to collect rain and other water sources, plastic kiddie pools, trash cans, pails or buckets, yard toys, even something as small as a bottle cap can hold enough water for a mosquito to lay eggs and for larvae to hatch out of those eggs and thrive. All right, so I've mentioned a couple of words here: eggs, larvae, pupa. Let's put these into context in the mosquito life cycle. So all mosquitoes start off as eggs. A female who has had a blood meal lays eggs on or near water. And this is totally dependent on species. So some mosquitoes will lay eggs directly on the water surface. Some of them will lay them on the soil, dirt, ground, near a place where there is water. Some of them will lay it in places that commonly flood. If they're laid on the ground like this, then the eggs have to wait until they're covered in water to hatch. So they may need to wait for rainfall to do that. So the eggs can also be laid singly, one at a time, separately. There are also species of mosquitoes that we see in Maine that will lay eggs that are attached in what we call rafts. So you may see a raft of eggs on the water surface, which could be hundreds of eggs all stuck together, floating there. Once conditions are ready, the eggs will hatch, which could happen anywhere between a few days to months after they've been laid. Once they're covered with water, these eggs will hatch into larvae. And we see several different stages, or what we call instars, of the larvae as they grow and get bigger. So the larvae have these brushes at their mouth. So here in the image on the screen with the larva in the bottom, we've got on the bottom end the head of the larva, and at the top what we call the siphon of the larva. So the head of the larva at the bottom here has these brushes at the mouth, and these brushes wave back and forth in the water, and they move microorganisms, so bacteria, small plankton, anything that's in that water towards the mouth of the larva, and that's what they eat. So the larvae are doing that in the water. They're eating all the time, getting all the energy that they need to grow. On the other end, they have what we call the siphon. This is what they use to breathe. They don't have lungs like we do, but they use this siphon in order to breathe. So this will either, for most mosquito species, be directed towards the water surface. So they'll stick that at the water surface and hang down in the water. Head is eating, siphon is breathing. However, there are a few species of mosquitoes out there that will actually insert this siphon into the base of plants, of water plants, and they actually breathe through the plant that way, which is really cool and helps them to stay away from some of the predators that may be out there looking for mosquito larvae to snack on. So the larvae are in the water, they're wriggling around in the water, and they will develop into a pupa in as few as 5 days, but it could be longer than that depending on the temperature, how much food they're able to get, and other external environmental qualities. So the pupa is kind of like the cocoon for a mosquito. So here in the round part of the pupa, up towards the top, we've got the cocoon type part, where the body of the larva is slowly developing all the parts, the legs, the wings, the head, that the mosquito needs to be an adult. Then the rest of the larva hangs out of this cocoon part, and this they actually use to move around. So this stage is breathing. They have a little what we call trumpet that they use to breathe through, but they're not eating. However, they can move around in the water in order to escape predators, and so they will tumble through the water in order to escape those predators. So this stage lasts for about 2 to 3 days, and once all of the parts grow that they need to be an adult, the adult will emerge from this cocoon, and they'll kind of sit at the water surface for a few minutes, up to 5 minutes, while they let their wings dry, and then the mosquitoes are ready to fly off. So once they fly off, the male is looking for a female to breed with. Otherwise, they're not really interested in finding anything to bite. Males do not feed on blood. They actually only feed on plant nectar. So they're not looking for a host, but they are looking for a female to breed with. It's the females that are looking for a blood meal. So they'll go around, they'll look for a male to mate with, and then they'll also be looking for a blood meal so that they can get all of the proteins and other good nutrients that they need to actually make the eggs. All right, so like I just said, only female mosquitoes take blood meals from humans and other animals. And so it's only the female that has the long proboscis or mouth parts that are needed to pierce the skin and suck blood. Male mosquitoes just feed on plant nectar. That's where they get the energy that they need to fly around. And the blood is really just a source of nutrients for the female to make eggs. So prior to actually taking the blood meal, the female injects saliva into the host when she bites. This has a couple of purposes. It really keeps the blood from clotting. There's also some compounds in there that cause a mild inflammatory reaction in the host, which is why when you get bitten by a mosquito, you get that raised red itchy bump afterwards. It's because of those compounds. So female mosquitoes actually find a host using a couple of different methods. So they are really good at sensing different chemicals that we put off from far away, up to 300 feet away. They can sense carbon dioxide that we breathe out. And they use that to really cue in on where hosts are. Where is a human that they want to bite? And they'll follow that cloud of carbon dioxide. They'll kind of zigzag through that until they get closer to the host that they want to bite. They'll also use other chemicals like pheromones from human sweat and things like that to really narrow in, to hone in on that host. And once they get closer, like within a few feet, they can start to use vision to see where the host is. Now, they don't have vision that's acute enough like we do to really see things quite like a human does, but they are able to tell the difference between high and low contrast, so like black on white. They're able to see movement, and so they can use that to find a place on the host to land and bite. All right, so now that we've talked about the life cycle of mosquitoes and some of their behavior, let's talk more about the mosquito-borne diseases that mosquitoes can spread when they bite. So we've got 3 different classifications of mosquito-borne diseases when we consider Maine. At the top, we have our endemic diseases, or diseases whose pathogens live in the mosquitoes that we have naturally in Maine. They're cycling through the wildlife and the mosquitoes, and they're always in nature in Maine. Then we have rare mosquito-borne diseases, which may crop up once in a while. The 2 here, La Crosse encephalitis virus and St. Louis encephalitis virus here on the slide, have never been found in Maine. But since they are in the United States, it is possible that at some point that could happen. Then we have our travel-associated viruses. So this would include chikungunya, dengue, malaria, yellow fever, and Zika viruses. And these travel-associated pathogens don't live in Maine. We don't have the mosquitoes that are needed to transmit these in Maine. However, if someone travels to another place, say another country where these pathogens are circulating, they can get bitten by an infected mosquito there and then come back and get sick. And we would detect that. We do test for these viruses, especially if someone has a history of travel to one of these places. However, for most of this talk, the rest of this talk, we're going to focus on our endemic viruses in Maine, which are Eastern Equine Encephalitis virus, Jamestown Canyon virus, and West Nile virus. So these are all referred to as arboviruses. Now, arboviruses is just a shortened form of arthropod-borne viruses. And these arboviruses spread to people mostly through the bite of an infected mosquito. There are some arboviruses like West Nile virus, which can also spread in other ways. So say through blood transfusions, through organ transplants from an infected person, donating an organ to an uninfected person, through breastfeeding, and from mother to baby during pregnancy. However, these are all rare, and the majority of arbovirus infections that we see in people are believed to be through the bite of an infected mosquito. It's important to know that anybody can get an arboviral disease. However, naturally, people who spend time outdoors, who have the most exposure to mosquitoes, are at the highest risk, simply because they're around mosquitoes and have the opportunity for mosquitoes to bite them the most. Also, people over 50 years of age and under 15 years of age are also at high risk for severe illness from a mosquito or from an arbovirus. We also know that arboviruses can not only infect people, which is what we're mainly focused on here, but they can also infect livestock, birds, and other animals. So if you've got pets or livestock in your life, make sure that you talk to your veterinarian about how you can best protect those animals. All right, so to get a little bit more specific, Eastern Equine Encephalitis virus, or triple E, is a rare but very serious disease. And it's really one of the most serious mosquito-borne diseases that we have in the United States. So serious that about a third of people who develop symptoms of triple E die. Then we have Jamestown Canyon virus, or JCV, which is really very rare in the United States. We know that about half of JCV cases result in hospitalization, but we don't really have a lot of information about this virus simply because it is so rare. Now, West Nile virus occurs throughout the United States. Many of you may remember when West Nile virus first spread through the United States. Most people who are infected with West Nile virus show mild signs and symptoms, and they'll recover completely, though they can have fatigue and weakness that can last for a while, from weeks to months. Though there are a small number of cases who will develop serious signs, and some of them may die. All right, so here in this graph, we can see the reported human cases of these 3 endemic arboviruses throughout the years from 2011 to 2020, which is our last full set of data. So across the bottom, you can see the year, and across the vertical axis, you can see the number of cases. In green, we have triple E. In blue, we have West Nile virus, and in yellow, we have Jamestown Canyon virus, all in humans. And you can see that we just have sporadic cases of these viruses scattered across the years. We do see some patterns. We had triple E cases show up 2 years in a row. We had Jamestown Canyon virus cases show up 2 years in a row. West Nile virus is kind of scattered amongst them all. And really, the appearance of these diseases in humans can really be tied in some way to the environment that year. So what was the weather doing those years? Some mosquito species and mosquito-borne diseases thrive in drier conditions when we may have water collecting in sewer catch basins or containers and not being flushed out regularly. So the larvae have a chance to really develop. And so we get lots of infected mosquitoes that way. Other mosquito species and pathogens really thrive in a wet, rainy year. So a lot of these different patterns are reflective of what was happening in the environment at that time. Here in this graph, we can see endemic arboviruses in Maine in non-humans. So the slide before was in humans. This is in non-humans in Maine from over the same time period from 2011 to 2020. In the graph on the left, we can see West Nile virus and Jamestown Canyon virus in non-humans. So in the light blue, we see the number of West Nile virus positive mosquito pools. In dark blue, we see West Nile virus positive horses. And in yellow, we see Jamestown canyon virus positive mosquito pools. Again, we can see we do have some clustering of our Jamestown canyon virus positive mosquitoes, likely due to a series of weather events during that time that really helped Jamestown canyon virus to thrive in those mosquitoes, to have those mosquito species thrive. In the graph on the right, we can see triple E cases in non-humans. So in light green, we have triple E in mosquito pools. In olive green, we have triple E positive horses. And in black, we have triple E positive other. That means any other animal species that was not a human. And it could be birds, most likely birds in this case. And we can see that in the 2013, 2014, 2015 arena, we had a lot of positive mosquitoes compared to every other year. And then since then, we have not had a whole lot. One really great pattern and the reason to see and the reason that we collect mosquitoes out in the environment and we test them is because usually we can detect these pathogens increasing in prevalence among the mosquito pools out in the wild before they start to spill over into our susceptible animal species and before they start to spill over into humans, which is why we do mosquito surveillance every year. All right, now that we've talked about some of the data in Maine, let's talk about symptoms of arboviral illness. So a lot of these arboviral illnesses really present with similar signs. These symptoms can range from anywhere from mild to severe. Some people don't experience any symptoms at all, and some people will have very severe symptoms. And these can range anywhere from just your run-of-the-mill flu-like symptoms, so fever and chills, head and body aches, nausea, swollen glands, muscle weakness, maybe even some diarrhea and feeling very tired or lethargic, all the way to some of our more severe neurologic manifestations like disorientation, being in a coma, having neck stiffness, and even inflammation of the brain and the spinal cord. And some of these signs can get very, very severe and require hospitalization. We know that symptoms of triple E and West Nile virus start anywhere from a few days to 2 weeks after being bitten by the infected mosquito. Because Jamestown canyon virus is so much more rare, we really don't know the incubation period or the time that it takes for symptoms to show up after being bitten by that infected mosquito. All right, so it's important if you start to develop any of these symptoms, especially in the summer, summer or early fall, that you talk to your doctor, talk to a healthcare provider, and they may want to take some samples of blood or cerebrospinal fluid, which is the fluid that's around your spine and your brain, to test for these viruses, to see if this is what's causing your symptoms. There's no specific treatment for arboviral illnesses. For the most part, symptoms can be treated with over-the-counter drugs, just like you would treat flu-like symptoms. However, as I mentioned before, severe illness usually requires some level of supportive treatment in the hospital. All right, so the best way to prevent an arboviral disease is to protect yourself and others from being bitten by mosquitoes in the first place. One of the best ways to do this is to avoid being outdoors from dusk to dawn when the mosquitoes in Maine are most active. I know this can be a big ask, especially on those really beautiful Maine summer nights. So if you do have to be out when mosquitoes are active, whether that's for recreation, for work, any of that, we recommend that you use an EPA approved insect repellent on your skin. These would include DEET, oil of lemon eucalyptus, which is a natural repellent, if that's important to you, IR 3535, and picaridin. These are the EPA approved insect repellents. It's important that when you use these, you follow the label instructions, especially when you want to pay attention to when you need to reapply, and you really want to pay attention to the age. If you're applying these to children, some of these can only be used on children over a certain age. We also recommend using permethrin on your clothing. This is not for use on skin, but it can be used to treat your clothing once it is dried on your clothing. It's good through several washes. So if you have some clothes that you like to wear when you're going out in a mosquito habitat, definitely think about treating those with permethrin. They can add another layer of protection for you. All right, so we've got our repellents here. We also recommend that you wear long sleeve shirts and long pants when you're outside to decrease the amount of skin that the mosquitoes can have access to. And then we also recommend that you view your surroundings. You take a look at your yard, the area where you spend the most time, and get rid of places where mosquitoes can lay their eggs by draining those artificial standing water sources outside the house. Get rid of those paint buckets that are just sitting out in the yard, the empty flower pots. Make sure that you take the tires and either put them in a garage or a shed where they're not going to hold water, or drill holes in them if you're not going to use them anymore. Remember, you at least want to drain any standing water in man-made containers at least once per week. This is especially true for containers that have to hold water, like pet water bowls that you may have outside or bird baths. Make sure that you're draining those and replacing the water every week, at least once every 7 days. The reason that we do this is it takes at least 7 days for larvae to go from hatching out of the egg all the way through the pupa stage into the adult stage. So as long as you're dumping that water out, you're disrupting that life cycle and not letting those larvae and pupa graduate to becoming adults. If you have tires, buckets that you can't get rid of, they have to be out, or even large yard fixtures that you can't get rid of, you can't move them, they hold water, go ahead and drill holes in those things so that they can't hold that water anymore. And then we also recommend that you go around and check your window and door screens and fix any holes that you find in them so that you don't have mosquitoes coming into your home. All right, you can find more information about mosquitoes as well as about ticks here at these links. We have some really great frequently asked questions documents that go into a lot of detail about everything from mosquito and tick biology, ecology, through the diseases that they can transmit, and prevention steps that you can take, and even some property management steps that you can take. We also feature here our school health page. This is where we have lots of information for school nurses, especially. If you have any questions about ticks or mosquitoes, you can't find the answers, go ahead and give us a call at our disease reporting and consultation line, 1-800-821-5821, or shoot us an email at disease.reporting@maine.gov. We also partner with the Maine Medical Center Research Institute Vector-Borne Disease Lab. Their number is there. You can also check out their website and give them a call with any questions. Finally, we partner with the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Tick Lab, especially. Their phone number and website is there. They operate the tick submission program. And so if you find a tick on yourself while you're out recreating, not being bitten by mosquitoes, you can submit a tick through them. All of the instructions are there at the link. Thank you for talking about mosquitoes with me.